So here we are in Elsie. She's a 1980s registered T25 campervan in beautiful pea green. It's really a fantastic colour, very bright, very easy to spot in the car park if you leave it somewhere. Also, of course, on the site, so you shouldn't need to be putting up any kind of banner for her. Now, she's a much faster campervan than our T2s. She's only about 25 years old, whereas they're in their 40s now. They have 1600cc engines, whereas Elsie here has a nice powerful 1900 and of course 5 gears down on the gear stick too. And that does make a big difference. She's a lot easier to drive, even if she is a lot larger. And of course, being larger does actually mean there are some restrictions in some of the car parks you can take her into, so it's very important to make sure before you drive into one that you're not going to be hitting the barrier at the top. It does actually say on her sun visor here how tall she is, and it's roughly 8'8". Now of course, many car park barriers are around about 6'6", precisely to stop vans like Elsie and other campsite equipment such as caravans going into them. So just be wary of that before you decide where you're going to stop for the night. She's a beautiful drive, she's very comfortable. She's got these Admiral's chairs which are much more comfortable than normal campervan seats, and also they have these fold down arms which makes it very comfy on a long journey. You can put them down on both sides and just rest your elbows while you're driving. Being a lot more powerful, she is of course a lot faster, and it's a lot easier to actually break the speed limit in her, so do be very careful about that, especially when you're in a residential area doing around about 30. She's very well equipped around the back. She's got all the usual stuff you'd expect to see in the kitchen, such as a 2-ring burner, but she's also got underneath that a grill, so you don't need to use a burner attachment for making toast, and unusually an oven, which is large enough to take some fairly decent sized meals. Now they all run off gas, and the gas is actually stored just below the grill in the cupboard there, and there are 4 taps that you can use to turn the gas on and off for safety reasons. The other thing that the gas is used for is the internal heating. Now that's controlled by a thermostat round the back, and that means if you pitch up on a slightly colder day, you don't need to worry too much about the temperature, because she does get nice and warm nice and quickly. And that works independently of the engine, so you didn't need to keep the engine running to actually be able to keep the van warm. Being a Type 25, she's a lot taller than the Type 2s. She doesn't have a pop-up top, which means there's no upstairs sleeping, but she does make up for that in many other ways. One of the primary ways in which she makes up for that, of course, is the fact that she has a lot of cupboard space. So if you do have trouble packing light, then this could be exactly the van for you. It also means there's place for you to actually hang up your clothes, so you don't have to keep them all folded in a holdall the whole day long. She's actually got a very comfortable 2-person bed around the back that folds out from the rock and roll seat as usual, and of course on those seats there are seat belts. There's lap belts for adults and one 3-point connection which can only be used for securing a child seat. For greater versatility though, it is possible to fit another bed across here. That's obviously only good for a child, but it does mean if you're travelling with children you can fit one on the floor in the back, the 2 adults in the bed, and of course one child up here in the cabin. There are curtains all the way around, just to make sure that you get a decent night's sleep, but some people do find that sleeping in a campervan can be a little bit distracting, in which case it may be advisable to bring along some earplugs, and if you have them, some eye masks as well, because that will do a lot to block out the incoming light. Below the oven you'll find a small fridge, and that also has a small ice box in it, so if you do need to actually take some ice cubes with you, that's where you can put them. Now this is run on the electrical hookup, which just connects on the side there when you're actually on a campsite. If you're not on a site, then you can run it off the leisure battery, which sits below the passenger seat there, and that will keep it cool all the time that you're driving, so you should be able to arrive at your destination, as long as it's obviously not on the other side of the planet, with your milk still cool and not off. Now, although Elsie is one of the easiest campervans we have to drive, it's also worth planning ahead, just as it is in Floyd, Delia and the other ones. That's because campervans are heavier, the brakes aren't always quite what you'd expect to find if you're used to driving a car, and of course the engine has to move around a far heavier vehicle, so it's well worth planning ahead before you pull out at junctions and on roundabouts. Something else to bear in mind is that obviously a campervan is a very different shape to a car. You might find it's a bit longer, you're sitting further to the front. There isn't a bonnet in front of you, so actually you are sitting within the crumple zone, so bear that in mind when you're driving, particularly if you start to pick up speed, just be a little bit more careful. But equally, your visibility is different. You have a lot of space behind you, less space in front, which means you might find it more difficult to see the vans and the vehicles behind you. The other thing is, just here, of course, we've got a cupboard, and that means you can't actually look straight over your shoulder and see what's going on behind you. Fortunately, on either mirror, there are blind spot eliminators, and they do help to a certain degree. but just bear in mind when you're driving the van around that things may be very different to what you're used to in a car. Internally there is lighting, there are strip lights either side within the body of the van, and also at the back, just above the bed, there are 2 reading lights, which is very convenient because it means you don't need to be getting out of bed to turn them off once you've got quite sleepy. So this is the cabin area. Rock and roll bed. This is obviously where the burner is. This is where you'll be doing most of your cooking. The controls for the burner are down here, and this also is where you'll find the grill. To the side of that we have under here the sink. Tap folds out from behind the bowl here, and there's a plug, and that just drains into the area outside down there. Folds in nicely, and there are clips on the top here just to keep everything in place. Just like that. Now, unusually for a camper van, there is in here a fridge, and inside the fridge there is a small freezer compartment which will keep things nice and cool. Just above the fridge, up here, is where the oven is. It does squeak a bit, block your ears, but what you'll find in there is just enough space to be cooking some meals, and when you combine it with, of course, the grill and the pan area, then that's plenty really for a small family. Under here, this is where the gas is kept, and what you'll find is there are 4 different stopcocks, and they control the grill under here, the hob as well, the oven, and of course the heating. Now the heating is actually controlled by a thermostat at the back, and that is just a simple case of turning the wheel round to the temperature that you want and turning it on. Do bear in mind that the more you use the thermostat, the more you're actually going to use up your gas, and gas is a limited supply, so don't be using too much because you don't want to run out halfway through your break. There's plenty of worktop space, which of course is useful for when you're cooking, and the other thing you'll notice is that just here by the sink there's a power point, and there's another power point up there just above the driver's seat. Now they actually run off the electrical hookup, so when you're on a campsite and you've connected to the supply from the site, these run just as normal. If you're not on a campsite, you're maybe using the leisure battery by the side of the road, then they automatically switch over courtesy of the fuse box which is up there above the oven. So let's take a look at the bed. Well, it's a fairly standard rock and roll bed of the kind you may well have come across if you stayed in a camper van once before. They're fairly easy to put out and also to fold up again the next day. To pull it out, all you do is you put one hand down the back, one under here at the front, and you just lift it and pull it forward. The whole thing then settles down just like a bed. And when you want to put it away, you simply reverse the procedure. Put one hand down the back, lift it up, and push the seat back into place. You'll find there's some very useful storage space under the bed when it's folded away, which includes this device here, which is used for securing the table. Simply place it in the hole there, and what you'll find is it swings backwards and forwards, and there's another hole here, and that's where the table actually is inserted. So bring the tables out. There's 2 back here. One's a dining table and one's a smaller table, and what you'll find is there is a peg here and there's a hole here, and one simply fits into the other. Lift up the table, slot the peg into the hole like that, and then you can move it to wherever is appropriate. You'll find the cutlery and the crockery are up here. In this cupboard here we have plates and bowls and a little candle holder. Obviously things may vary from time to time, and in this one here we've got mugs, other bowls, and a couple of glasses, and this of course is where the extractor fan goes out of the van. And that's it in a nutshell. That's Elsie. She's very comfortable, a wonderful drive, and I hope you'll enjoy her as much as I do.